If you caught episode 1, which you should have caught, we talked about what is reward. And yesterday we talked about it from the nice guy angel perspective. For my Patreon supporters, this is the B side. This is the devil's perspective. The producer, the profiteer, the pillager, the guy who thinks about these things because he wants to better himself first. That is my preferred angle. But it's important to know from the nice guy side why the brain works as it does in regards to higher or lower rewards. Now, we're going to look at it as to how we can use reward to make our lives better. And that really is going to be everything about marketing, everything about branding, everything about creating culture. And if you're familiar with what I call the low reward cult conspiracy cookbook, these are ingredients that I'm going to get into hopefully more every day. So let's look back over episode 1 or episode 1A. One of the first things that we talked about when it comes to lower or higher reward is that there are multiple other forms of reward that go into the final acquisition of, say, a good or a service. We talked about going to the junk food restaurant and getting a taco. And most people will consider the taco as the reward. But that actually is not how the brain works. There are different levels of reward in acquiring the taco, including how did we get there? What kind of transportation did we use? Did we walk? Did we take the car? Did we have it delivered? And in terms of reward, walking is lower reward, delivery is higher reward, driving the car is in between the two. When you're producing a good or a service, it's important to consider how do we make the acquisition of our good or service higher reward for the consumer? And the reason we ask these questions is because we want the consumer addicted. When we sell a product, we're not doing it out of the kindness of our heart. We're doing it because we want return customers. It costs more to acquire a customer sometimes than the profit we make on the first sale. And that depends, of course, on what you're selling. If you're selling a beer, you're probably making money each and every time. But once you factor in advertising, street signage, flyers, coupons, events to bring them in the store, you might actually be losing money the first time they come in to your store. So by making them addicted to what we're offering, you're going to have a customer or a consumer who's easier to get back into the store. So we talk about reward from a producer's perspective, not because we don't want to be the addicted consumer. We want to be the producer who's providing that joyful, hedonistic end product that the consumer wants and ignores all their other reward elements that are involved in getting to that product. Yesterday we had talked about the cost of time driving to the grocery store, delivering the product. And as many people who are in the goods and services industry know, many consumers have switched to the highest reward form of acquiring a good, which might be Amazon Prime, next day delivery for so-called free. If your good or product can be delivered, you absolutely should be looking at what is involved in delivering that product to the consumer versus just selling it at the store. And this is even true of oil changes and car washes and altering suits and clothes. If you're not providing a delivered service, you might be cutting your market out. The delivery being the highest reward form of acquisition of a good or service means that more and more consumers are going to be considering it. Even if you make less money on each sale, you may end up having many more customers who are willing to pay a little bit more to get the product to come to them instead of them coming to the product. And that would be the one aspect of reward that has to do with the time and acquisition. One of the other aspects of reward that we had discussed in episode 1 is the actual cost, the financial cost, and that typically a lower priced product is usually higher reward or more addicting than a higher priced product. And again, as I said in the previous episode, that's not always the case if your brand requires that the product be more expensive, like Gucci, for example, or maybe Nike versus Target brand sneakers. But we'll ignore that small aspect of marketing and branding. What's important, though, is if you can find a way to reduce the price of your good, you're actually going to make a product that the consumer is more attracted to and that the consumer is actually more addicted to. And a lot of times when I talk to vendors of goods and services, they say, I can't lower my prices. But what they're forgetting to do is that they can possibly reduce the size or scope of the good or service that they're providing in order to reduce the price. We've seen this in many consumer products lately, where the box of cereal gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and the price stays the same. What the company's doing, in effect, is they are lowering the price. The cost of creating that product, be it from inflation or supply, cost of inventory that's put into the good or service they're selling, has gone up. So instead of raising their pricing, they're decreasing the size of the item. And consumers typically don't look at these items. I saw something the other day that I wanted to take a picture of, where some junk food product, be it gummy bears or licorice or whatever, had a serving size that was like 7 grams. And the whole container that I had seen at the store was like 150 grams. So you have 20 tiny servings. There's no possible way anyone's eating one serving. But the cost per little baggie that was in the box was probably only 35 cents. And that's what the consumer was looking at. Had you said, buy this $7 bag of goods, they probably would have scoffed at spending $7 on gummies, but really you're only spending 25, 30 cents on a bag, on a serving. Wow, that's cheap. And again, this leads to the reward element. We're creating a higher reward price by lowering it, even though the serving size of the good or service is much, much smaller. I remember when I was a kid, going back 30 years ago, and I first started driving, the oil change places would say oil changes from $9.99. And you've seen the sales up to 70% off. Why do they do this? They do this because it's creating a higher reward pricing element that the consumer is not thinking through. So as a profiteer, as one who's trying to pillage the consumer, not just of their money today, but of their money in the long run, we have to remember that we're aiming to increase the reward elements of our goods and services. We're making the consumer feel a dopamine high. They're getting the product delivered to their house or making it easier on them to pick up, whether it's curbside pickup or some kind of VIP treatment when they pick up. They're paying a lower price than before, even though maybe we're cutting the size of what we're giving them, or we're giving them a carrot on a stick saying starting at $9.99 or up to 70% off. If your products don't have that kind of price reward in them, you need to look back. You need to reconsider, what are we doing to market to the reward elements of the consumer? And what about risk? We talked in episode 1 about risk. A high risk acquisition is lower reward. Consumers don't want risk. They don't want to consider the chance of failure. Nobody goes to the taco restaurant and hopes they don't get a taco. They go to the taco restaurant because they want the taco. So the same is true from a producer perspective. when we're talking about risk, we want to make the consumer feel like they aren't taking a risk. And some of the many ways that people do risk reduction is to offer a warranty or a money-back guarantee or a free trial period. All of these things are important because they give the consumer the idea that it's going to be lower risk, which again creates a high reward response in the brain. I'm buying this product that's going to be delivered to me and it's half the price that it was last year, and of course much smaller than it was last year. And also, if I don't like it, I can give it back and get all my money back. Now, do you have some kind of a low risk offer on your goods or services? Do you promote that? A lot of times new producers to markets don't, because they're afraid, oh no, what if they try and return it? What if they bring it back to me? But you have to understand, producers before you know that the average consumer is not going to return an item. Some do. A lot of people joke about how Costco will take back dirty underwear 2 years later. But the reality is the vast majority of consumers will never do it. Even if it breaks in 30 days, the vast majority of people will ask for a return authorization number and never send the item back. That's because it doesn't feel good. When a consumer returns something, it feels bad to them. Like they made a mistake, that they're embarrassed. So you don't really have to worry about having a longer warranty or a longer return period or a trial period. Whatever the case may be, the consumer's probably going to stick with what they bought. Otherwise, it will frown on their being the expert of knowing what's good and what isn't. A lot of companies do that scammy Autopay. Get 30 days of this useless supplement for free if you sign up for Autopay. And of course, if you're familiar with it, the reward elements, free is very high reward. The Autopay is low risk to the consumer because of course they're going to cancel before the 30-day period comes up. Of course they're going to remember to get something for free and never pay again. And as you know, from your own Autopay situations, they don't do it. They don't cancel right away. Sometimes they don't cancel ever. There's plenty of people out there who have gym memberships going on for years and years and years that they, as consumers, don't want to cancel because it makes them feel bad that they had made a bad decision. So versus feeling bad for a moment and canceling the service, they just let it keep auto billing. Makes them feel like an expert. Well, someday I'll use those supplements. Someday I'll go through those 9 bags of protein powder that have been piling up and expired starting in 2015. That's not how it works, though. As a producer and as a profiteer, we have to understand that these are reward elements at play. We're playing with the consumer's weak mind, their sense of expertise, their sense of being smart and right and getting a deal. We're playing with them because we understand how the brain serves them the dopamine they crave. Nobody buys anything anymore as a consumer because they actually want it. They buy it because they get high on it. They get the dopamine craving and they think to themselves, I feel good. I'm glad I bought this. I may not use it. I may not want it. Maybe it makes me fat. Maybe it makes me unhealthy. Maybe it keeps me from having a loving relationship with my family. But guess what? I feel good about it. And the fourth thing that we covered yesterday, wrapping all of this up, is that when we reduce certain rewards that lead up to an objective, we go for a walk to get those tacos instead of driving, or we drive to get that pizza instead of delivery. When we reduce those rewards that are involved in acquisition of a consumer product, we lower our reward, we lower our addictive nature, we lower our cravings and desire for it. As a producer, we don't want the consumer to even think of those options. It's very important as a producer that we don't lead the consumer to realize that there are safer and healthier ways to go about it. When you sell a taco, of course you want to mention that there's a salad there, but you don't want to mention, hey, you could walk here too. Or, hey, you could drive to pick up the pizza for cheaper instead of free delivery, even though the pizza is $4 more. We don't want to give them those options. We don't even want to put it in their minds. And if you conflate, if you mix your social media business with your social media personal, and you're following a lower reward lifestyle plan personally, you don't want to be the guy who's lowering your reward as a person while trying to gimmick your consumers into higher reward activities and behaviors to become addicted. It's really hard for a producer to live lower reward publicly while using the same gimmicks on the consumer through their brand, which is why my businesses now are not on my social media profiles. I don't tell you what I own. I don't tell you what I sell. I keep them separate through my sock accounts, my other identities, my nom de plume, as it is. And that way, the people who follow me about lower reward stuff have no idea that I might also be selling some junk to them. Maybe I'm an owner in that pizza joint or that taco joint. Maybe I'm the guy selling that protein powder, Autopay. Hey, it's free for 30 days, by the way. They don't know because I'm not conflating the two. I'm not mixing them up. And that is a really important thing to start thinking about if you don't run a business right now. If you don't run a business right now, then you want to start that business separate from your personal friends and family social media accounts. And you can do that very easily on Instagram and Facebook and whatever else. Create a corporation. Create a throwaway sock account. Put everything into there. And that way, if your personal account gets banned, you don't have to worry about not having access to your business account. Plus, if you're sharing the low reward good news with your friends and family, they're not going to think you're a hypocrite for also trying to scam everyone out of the last cent that they have while getting them addicted to their product. If you're following me because you want some ideas on lowering reward in your personal life or raising reward of your business and services, note that I'm going to be trying this new format, the angel and devil format, where the angel posts will go to the public freely, while the devil posts will stay quiet, kept in secret, so the people who follow you on social media don't know that we've got this kind of two-faced, two-sided hypocrite nature. It's a real good way to profit while reducing your own addictions, your own sense of guilt, your own sense of low worth and low value, and I'm glad that you can be along for the ride. If you have any thoughts on this format, please leave a comment below. And as always, make sure that you share the angel posts while keeping the devil posts private for those of us who are in the inner circle. I'm Adam Brian Dada, and this is Low Reward Living.